Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Henchman's Memoirs. This is our campaign diary of our Dark Souls of Drakkenheim campaign. When we last left off, our band of protagonists were here in the Rat's Nest, and they had reached this room, which was the hideout of Squeaks, the Grey Seer. And among the things in this room are this very important rock with a big piece of delirium warpstone sticking out of it. Our players had defeated the Grey Seer, but her imp familiar had managed to scurry off invisibly, so our players knew that they were on the clock. Talon, whose motivation has a lot to do with greed and getting in good with the Thieves Guild, immediately was like, we've got to secure this rock and take it with us. Of course, the whole reason they're here is to rescue Petra Lang, so this was kind of a target of opportunity for them. But Nexel got out his bedroll. The party has a pretty good idea that touching delirium with their bare hands is a no bueno. So Nexel got out his bedroll and wrapped the stone like a burrito, and managed to jam it into his backpack. The book says that it's only 50 pounds, so I figure it can't be much larger than, a beach ball. So they wrapped that thing up and decided to keep going on their way. They hope you can see on this map the contrast is a little weak, but they come up here, and this little side room was another ratling nest. I think Talon had moved kind of towards the back. He was down at 0 hit points, and they brought him back with a scroll of healing, but he was still in pretty rough shape. So I think Peter and Thaddeus managed to get into this little side room and take care of these ratlings before they could cry out. And the party moves up here to this intersection. Again, Peter's the only one who needs lamplight. So he has this little lamp. He has this bullseye lantern that he has most of the way closed, so it's only giving out just a little bit of light. Peter decides to scurry across here real quick, stealthily, and check out this room, which is a place where the ratlings keep their food stores and, partially decaying bodies. You can see they've got some kind of corpses drawn on the map here, and wouldn't you know it, this is where they find Petra Lang. So this is the hooded lantern girl, Handsome Ansem Lang's sister, that they came here looking for. She's all tied up. So some of the other party members come forward a little bit, but, Talon kind of looks in there and is giving him the signal for, get her and let's go. So I think at one point Nexel ended up over here for some reason. But eventually they cut Petra's bonds and take her gag out, and she's like, oh, you're here to rescue me, we've got to get out of here. I'm surprised that they kept me alive this long. And so all they had to do was roll their stealth rolls to get back across this little opening without being seen by whatever was in here, and they would hopefully be more or less off scot-free. So Nexel made his roll, no problem. I think they had advantage because no one was particularly looking for them. And Petra made her roll, and then Pietor is coming across and just made a terrible stealth roll. So I described he had been using his lantern as an improvised weapon. So I described he was trying to reclose the shutters on the hooded lantern part, and a beam of light kind of shoots out into this area here and lands on the eyes of the rat ogre, right, which is this big, powerful rat ogre from Warhammer Fantasy. So I had him in this room. He's not in the original adventure, but I put him in here, and a single beam of light kind of shoots down in here and lands like right on one of the red eyes of the rat ogre. And he comes awake and starts coming after the party. So a brief melee situation broke out here. I think Thaddeus tried to slow him down with a move earth cantrip to make it more difficult for him to get through. Talon's character was 100% concerned about making sure Nexel made it out, because Nexel was carrying this 1,000 gold pieces worth of warpstone. So Talon was like, "Come with me, you are very important," pretty hilarious. And Petra's trying to get out of there. Things did not go great for the party, just the way 5e works with being able to dash and who can move how many feet and who can move through who. The party was trying to make it out all the way around. Oh, you can't see it off the side of the map. They were trying to make it out all the way around and come out over here. And the party is kind of running through these narrow hallways, and this huge mammoth rat ogre is kind of scratching along the walls, coming after them, kind of squeezing through these narrower passageways. And they finally get to here where this is their way back out into the city. They've almost escaped. But Thaddeus, because he's a gnome and he has a slightly slower move, and because he thought he could slow the thing down with an entangle ability, ended up at the back of the pack. And the rat ogre caught up to him. I was using some stats from Necromancer's Games 5th edition foes. He has like this blood frenzy ability, so on and so. Anyway, he can do a lot of damage if he gets his hands on you. And he did get his hands on Thaddeus. And Thaddeus went down. Thaddeus went down to 0 hit points, and the party everybody is in bad shape. Petra only has a dagger that somebody gave her, and she already threw it at the rat ogre. All of them are low on hit points, low on spell slots, out of key points, the whole shooting match. So Petra starts shouting, "Listen, they kept me alive," because when the rat ogre's turn came around, he picks up Thaddeus in his mouth and starts heading back down this hallway. And Petra's like, "Look, they kept me alive. They might keep him alive. Let's go get some reinforcements, get healed up, and come back for him." So eventually she convinces the party that that's the right thing to do. And I let the player of Thaddeus take her over as they headed back out into the city. So Petra wanted to return to a place called Shepherd's Gate, which is an outpost of the Hooded Lanterns. It's actually closer than reaching the edge of the mists that surround the city. And she knew they could get reinforcements there and stuff. So she starts leading them towards Shepherd's Gate. Unfortunately, they're still in what I call the dust quarter of Drakkenheim, and now this wind has picked up, and the dust has just become like this particulate haze where they can't really see more than 10 feet. And I didn't communicate this well enough to my players, I have the idea that the whole city kind of has like this haunted funhouse sort of quality to it, where even if you think you know how to get from one part of the city to another, whatever, you can suddenly turn down an alley that you think you know where it goes, and all of a sudden it's a dead end. Or you reach this intersection and you look back the way you came, and there's a burnt down bridge there instead of the road you just came along. And so it's very easy to get disoriented, and I make them roll sort of survival checks anytime they're going more than a few blocks in the city, just to see if they get lost, which the dungeon dudes included in the original rules. There's you can just get lost in the city for no apparent reason, even if you're supposed to know your way around. So they're traveling around in this sort of dust storm, and they start to hear this sound of another one of these husks, these charred husk guys marching around, right? So I wanted to do this thing where they can hear it coming, and they've got to decide, are they going to try to hide or try to circle around? And unfortunately, my players kind of did an every man for themselves kind of thing. Petra ducked down a side road, and I think Talon and Nexel backed up, and Pietor jumped into a nearby building through a broken wall. So they got separated as this thing was kind of moving around. And they were trying to figure out, how to basically get back together without having to fight this thing. Because, as I say, they were in really bad shape. Eventually, Nexel used a kind of illusion spell to try to scare it away, and I just did like a even or odds thing. Is it going to go down this hallway or this alleyway or this road or whatever? Petra heard it coming at one point. She was more or less by herself, and she heard it coming, and she tried to hide, and she just did a terrible hide roll, and he did a pretty good perception roll. So he was right on top of her, and he starts swinging at her. She only had 20 hit points left, and he did like 16 in one hit. But she did have the advantage that if she could just get about 10 feet away from him, he really wouldn't be able to see her, and maybe she could try again to hide. So the rest of the party hears what's happening. They're trying to figure out if they can get there. Sounds are echoing weirdly and stuff, but eventually they got lucky. I rolled an even instead of an odd, and he basically turned down a side street and disappeared, and they were able to continue on their way to Shepherd's Gate. So they make it to the Hooded Lantern's outpost, and they talk to the guy who's in charge there, and Petra is able to convince him to send a couple of scouts, a couple of Hooded Lantern runners with them to try to get back to the rat's nest and rescue this guy that had so valiantly rescued her. So with the scouts' help, they were able to get back to the rat's nest without any further random encounters. They made it back through the areas they had already explored pretty easily. They got to this area where the rat ogre had been, and they found this awful idol to the horned god with a couple pieces of delirium for eyes and some other shards and stuff. All these things they were sacrificing to it and so forth in front of it. They took care of a few ratling scouts in here and then went down this passageway, and with Talon's sneaking skills were able to get a look into this room and see the rat ogre, a few more ratlings, and then this fellow here who is the rat prince, who his front teeth have been replaced with pieces of warpstone, and he's got a little crown made of trash and gold and stuff they've put together for him. And so they get a look into this room, and Talon launches a couple of his psychic daggers and kills one of these ratlings, and the fight was on. And the problem for the party in a situation like this is they basically have one tank, and it's the monk. There's basically nobody else designed for close-in fighting. Maybe if their druid had still been alive, he could have wild-shaped into something. Speaking of which, they saw him tied up in the corner over here, and he's attached to a spit. This is a great big bonfire, and they were getting ready to roast him slowly over the spit. So Pietor is got to do what a monk's got to do. He gets in here and he's tanking, and he's basically fighting the rat prince and the rat ogre, and I think a couple of these guys at the same time, because they didn't have anywhere else to go but to try to get a piece of him. So he was tanking it and doing his best, but he knew he couldn't stay in there forever. The two scouts run forward and start shooting, and Petra Lang, who gets 2 attacks around with her bow, moves into space, and then I think Nexel was back here, and although they had a short rest, I didn't give him any spell slots back, so all he had was cantrips and stuff. He couldn't even use his hex ability. So this all starts going down. They're trying to get these guys off of Pietor. They're really trying to get rid of this rat ogre. He does a lot of damage, and I was keeping track of the rat ogre's hit points and his blood frenzy condition, and he had taken a little bit of damage in the previous fight, and that's when it dawned on me somebody else had taken some damage in the previous fight. The rat that is actually an imp that was the familiar of the Grey Seer, Squeaks. So Squeaks' familiar creeps up on Talon invisibly and is trying to get a bite out of him. I think it bit him twice, and he managed to save against the poison both times. But this fight was looking pretty ugly as things progressed. This was a real nail biter from my point of view. They managed to finally take down the rat ogre. Talon managed to kill the rat imp thing, and for some reason Pietro did like a disengage thing and got over here. Actually, I think the rat ogre was still alive because he came over to fight the scouts. Pietro comes over here, and the rat king decides, the rat prince decides he wants to take a bite out of him. Got over here. I'm pretty sure he got him down to 0 hit points. Right about the same time that the rat ogre was killed. Now, in my mind, I'm playing the rat prince. He doesn't want to die in this encounter. He knows once the rat ogre goes down, he doesn't know how badly hurt the party is. By the way, one of these scouts got killed by the rat ogre too. Even then, he knows he's outnumbered, and he knows, he doesn't want to die this way. So when the rat ogre went down, he basically made the decision to run for it. The party was trying to see if they could get one last shot on him as he headed up this corridor and out of the campaign. But we ended the session. They ran over and stabilized Pietro. The rat prince had taken him down to 0. Thaddeus was stable and at 0 because they wanted to save him and keep him fresh. The party got in there. They stabilized Pietro. They're going to have to carry both of them all the way back to Shepherd's Gate, along with all the loot they can find in the rest of this place. So if you're liking these recaps, let us know. Subscribe to the channel so you can keep up with us. I'm thinking about including black powder weapons in the campaign. I can't decide if I want to include that or not. I don't mind it sometimes as a kind of a Victorian era feel, but leave a comment and tell me if you think that would be a good idea for a Dungeons of Drakkenheim campaign. We'll be back next week.